Today, we are diving into a Hindi horror story that is just absolutely chilling. It's called Vadhu, which translates to bride. And believe me, it masterfully builds suspense to tell this really powerful story of betrayal, murder, and the supernatural revenge that comes roaring back.
Right out of the gate, the story hits us with these incredibly ominous words from the groom's mother to the new bride. I mean, it's a wedding day, right? But that one line, it tells you immediately that something is terribly, terribly wrong. It just sets this dark, foreboding tone for everything that's about to happen.
And that brings us right into our first part, an ominous welcome. This is where we see a wedding that feels a lot less like a party and way more like some kind of grim, terrifying ritual.
So we meet our bride, Prerna, as she arrives with her new husband, Samir. But you know, instead of getting a warm welcome into her new home, she's stopped right at the village border. She's handed this ceremonial plate with just a single burning lamp and is told she has to perform this strange ritual for their ancestors. The whole atmosphere, it isn't joyful at all. It's just thick with tension and this palpable fear.
Prerna is obviously confused, and honestly, so are we. The entire village seems to be holding its breath, just watching this one little flame. So the question becomes, why is everyone so terrified of it going out? I mean, what could possibly happen?
And here we get the terrifying answer. The mother-in-law explains that the village is haunted by this malevolent spirit. And this spirit, it preys on new brides on their wedding night, but, and this is the crucial part, only if it can find them in the dark. So every single house has to keep a lamp lit, and Prerna's lamp absolutely must stay lit, or the spirit will find her and possess her.
Well, this leads us straight into our second section, the shadow of evil. This is the part of the story where that initial dread we felt, it escalates into some very real, very tangible horror. And just like that, the fragile piece is shattered. A shadowy figure in a black cloak blows out a nearby lamp, and at that exact same moment, the flame on Prerna's plate dies. The curse is triggered. Prerna just freezes, her eyes turning a horrifying blood red, and she lunges for her husband's throat. In a total panic, a village woman rushes forward and puts holy sindoor on her forehead, which is kind of like a temporary fix that makes her faint and stops the attack for now.
Okay, so the key here is understanding sindoor. It's a traditional red powder, sure, but in this story, the sindoor from the local temple is basically their only weapon. It's believed to be blessed, powerful enough to ward off evil. It's their lifeline.
Fearing the spirit is still around, the family sends the groom's father to the temple to get more of this protective sindoor. But on his way back, that same mysterious woman in black bumps into him, he drops the container, and in that split second, she swaps the real blessed sindoor with a fake, completely powerless substitute. So now the family thinks they're protected, but in reality, they are completely defenseless.
And this brings us to the climax of the story, Ganga's revenge. With the family's only defense now totally useless, the spirit is finally free to unleash its full, terrifying fury.
Back at the house, Prerna is supposed to be preparing the traditional first meal for her new family, but the spirit is now in complete control. She serves a sweet dish, but it's drenched in fresh blood. When Samir recoils in horror, she attacks, smashing his head against the table.
The father, Vinod, he runs to get the sindoor, their last hope. He throws it at the possessed Prerna, expecting the spirit to just flee in terror. But instead, she just starts laughing. And this moment just brilliantly illustrates their horrifying realization. The sindoor is useless, their protection is a total fraud, and they are completely trapped.
So the family is cornered, their defenses have totally failed, and they're at the mercy of this laughing, blood-soaked entity. The critical question at this absolute peak of terror is, who is she, and what could they have possibly done to deserve this kind of horror?
And then, through Prerna's lips, the spirit finally speaks its name, Ganga, and she makes her motive crystal clear. This isn't random, this is targeted revenge, and she is not leaving until it's finished. So, to understand this burning need for revenge, we have to go back in time. This takes us to the absolutely heartbreaking story behind The Haunting, a story of betrayal.
So it turns out the spirit, Ganga, was the daughter of the family's maid. Samir had an affair with her, and she got pregnant. When she told him, he just refused to marry her, calling her a lowly servant. But when Ganga threatened to expose him and ruin his family's precious reputation, they panicked. They staged a fake wedding just to quiet her down, and then they murdered her.
And here is the most brutal, gut-wrenching detail of their crime.
Ganga was 8 months pregnant when they killed her. They didn't just murder a young woman they had betrayed, they murdered Samir's own unborn child, all to protect their social standing.
Now that we know the full, horrific truth of the crime, we come back to the present for the final act, the final justice.
And here's the final heartbreaking twist. That mysterious woman in the black cloak, that was Rekha, Ganga's mother. After the murder, she didn't just find out what happened, she overheard the family celebrating what they'd done, mocking her daughter's death. Can you even imagine that kind of pain, that rage? She was so consumed by grief, she turned to the darkness herself. She learned black magic, not for evil, but to empower her daughter's spirit, to give Ganga the strength to claim the justice she was denied. She was the architect of this entire night, a mother orchestrating her child's final terrible piece. With her mother's dark magic behind her, Ganga's spirit carries out her promise. And this is not a chaotic rampage, it's a methodical execution. First, she snaps the neck of Asha, the mother-in-law who planned the murder. Then she kills Samir, the man who betrayed her. And finally, she kills Vinod, the father who helped cover it all up.
With the lives of her 3 murderers taken, Ganga's purpose is finally fulfilled. Her restless spirit finds mukti, which means liberation. She leaves Purna's body, which just falls to the floor, and her soul is finally allowed to find peace.
So let's just recap this whole tragic cycle. On one side, you have Ganga and her unborn child, betrayed and murdered by a family who was just desperate to protect their reputation. They died helpless. On the other side, that exact same family is brutally killed by the very spirit they created through their own crime.
And this brings us to our final lingering question. Ganga's murderers, they were protected by their wealth and their status. They were never going to be held accountable by any earthly law. They were punished by a supernatural force that was born from their own evil actions. So was this an act of pure revenge? Or was it, in its own terrifying way, a form of final justice?